Okay, let's dive right into a fascinating historical mystery. We're heading back to the 17th century to solve a puzzle that honestly baffled historians for almost 200 years. And it all hinges on a diary that was lost to time. This is the core question. Just try to imagine it for a second. You're inside the walled city of Derry. You're starving, you're under siege, and then you finally see them. The ships, the rescue fleet sent to save you. But then they just sit there, day after day after day, for weeks. Why? 6 weeks. For 6 long, agonizing weeks, the people of Derry just held on. I mean, food was gone, disease was spreading, and hope was just evaporating, all while they could see the ships that were supposed to save them doing absolutely nothing. The whole thing became this infamous historical stain. So, for nearly 200 years, the blame was pinned squarely on one guy, Major General Kirke. He was called a coward, maybe a traitor, or both. It was the easy answer, right? The story everyone just kind of accepted. But the real truth, well, it was way more complicated, and it was hiding in a dusty, anonymous manuscript in a library. So how on earth did this 200-year-old cold case finally get cracked? Well, it all came down to a historian's chance discovery, a moment of pure luck in a quiet library in Dublin. And you gotta remember the sheer amount of time we're talking about. 200 years go by. The mystery is just unsolved. Then, in 1884, a historian, this guy Thomas Witherow, is just browsing a catalog in Dublin. He's not really looking for anything specific. But then, a title catches his eye, and he stumbles upon this thin little vellum-bound book. And as he starts reading this old, fine handwriting, it hits him. He's holding a first-hand account written by someone on the relief fleet. This was the voice from the sea that history had been missing all this time. I mean, this is the moment his heart must have just started pounding. See, Lord Macaulay was the historian of this period. For this diary to have been completely missed by him, by everyone, it meant Witherow had found a missing piece of the puzzle, a historical ghost. But okay, finding this historical ghost wasn't the end of it. Witherow ran into a huge problem. The author had very deliberately hidden his own name. The diary was anonymous. So now, Witherow, our historian, has to put on his detective hat. The diary was a goldmine of information for sure, but to really use it, he had to figure out who wrote it. Luckily for him, the author had left clues, almost like little breadcrumbs, hidden right there in his own words. And this is where it gets really clever. Witherow just followed this brilliant trail of evidence. First, he figured out the author's job. He wasn't a sailor, he was an engineer. Then, he used the diary's own text to rule out other officers. The big break, though, came from a single initial, the letter R, in a protest note. And the final nail in the coffin? The author mentions being sent to Derry on August 2nd, and Witherow cross-references that with another history, which confirms that Colonel Richards was sent that very same day. Case closed. And just like that, boom, a name was finally put to this vital historical account. Colonel Richards, an officer of engineers, was our anonymous witness. His secret was out after 200 years. All right, so now that we know who wrote it, the diary can finally do its job. It can finally solve that central mystery. Why did the fleet wait? It's like Witherow himself put it. After 2 centuries of silence and blame, Colonel Richards was finally here to solve the mystery. And the first thing the diary reveals is an absolute game changer. It wasn't Major General Kirke's fault alone. This wasn't simple cowardice. The inaction was, and I'm quoting here, the deliberate but calamitous resolve of a council of war. It was a formal military decision. Richards' diary basically puts us right inside that council meeting, and it reveals a room full of officers who are just crippled by fear and bad intelligence. They thought the enemy was stronger than they were, they thought their own forces were weaker, and they were terrified of rumors about this massive boom made of chains and timber blocking the river. And maybe the worst part, because they hadn't heard from the city, they just assumed things weren't that desperate yet. They were catastrophically wrong on every single point. You know, the reason Colonel Richards' diary was such a big deal is that it gave us a completely new and absolutely essential perspective on the entire siege. You can really see the 2 sides of the story here. For centuries, all historians had were journals from inside the city walls, like Captain Ash's, which talked about all the suffering and confusion. But now, with Richard's diary, we finally got the view from the outside, the military strategy, the bad intelligence, and all the debates happening on those ships. And it's a perfect example of how history is never just one clean story, right? It's messy, it's complex, it's a conversation between different voices. These raw, unpolished diaries, one from the starving city, one from the waiting fleet, they're the very building blocks we use to get a fuller picture of the past. So after all this, what does this amazing little 200-year-old detective story actually teach us about how we understand the past? Think about it. For 200 years, one story gets told. One man's reputation is just ruined. And then one historian, on one afternoon, finds one document that rewrites the entire narrative. It's just such a powerful reminder that our understanding of history is never final. It's a living thing that can be totally transformed by a single new piece of evidence. Which leaves us with this final thought. Colonel Richard's diary waited 200 years for its Thomas Witherow to come along. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other truths, what other hidden perspectives and lost voices are just sitting on a dusty shelf in an archive somewhere, waiting for the right person to find them and rewrite the story we all thought we knew?